My name is Nedson Popiwa. I work for the Center for Learning on Evaluation and Results. So I'm looking at the way government departments use evidence to inform policies, but also to inform decision making, particularly on a daily basis, and also how they use evidence to reflect on their projects and their programs to see whether they are working or not working, and on what areas they can improve. So the case I'm looking at is the Department of Basic Education in South Africa, which is the key department mandated with a big task of making sure that there's universal access to education and everything that goes with educating the young population of the nation. So I'm looking at how decisions that are made by the department involve processes of utilizing evidence. And this evidence comes from many quarters, including surveys and so on. But ideally in this study, I'm looking at how they have been able to institutionalize evidence that comes from evaluations that have been done. The particular case focuses on two evaluations that have been done. The first one is a bursary program which funds teacher development or teacher training. It's called Funza Lushaka. And the second one is looking at the National School Nutrition Program. It's important to have such types of evaluations because this is how government can take a step back and look at whether they are implementing those programs very well and effectively also efficiently and timeously. So it also means, is this value for money? Should these programs continue?
So Funza Lushaka is a bursary program of the South African government that was introduced in 2007 and had the primary objective to make teaching a viable option for young people by funding them for the duration of their studies. The reason why we implemented the bursary program in 2007 was because as a country, we produced less than 6,000 graduates from our universities. So we were running a risk that we're not going to have enough teachers. So the South African government then started the bursary program. And since 2007 to the last 12 years, the government has spent close to 8 billion rand on bursaries for young people to become teachers.
When we first started, we had a program which was established in 2007. 6-7 years later, we had a fairly good idea of what it was supposed to be doing. We didn't really have a sort of robust monitoring system for it, and certainly not the generalized understanding across the national department, the 9 provinces, but also partners about how it works, what the processes are, what expectations there are for timing, etc.
We felt that the evaluation would enable us to really put the Funza Lushaka bursary program out there as a credible program and worthy of the funding that government has been invested in the program. Initially our thoughts was to do an impact evaluation, but as we moved into the design phase of the evaluation, we decided to settle on an implementation evaluation with the possibility in future years to do a longitudinal impact study. The report was positive about the bursary program and the role that it is playing within the education community. The recommendations was pertinent and very clear in terms of the specific areas that we need to invest in. So, for example, there was a clear recommendation that we need to invest in a proper information management system to facilitate that process, and we were able to do that. We've got now a system that was developed together with the State Information Technology Agency. So I think that was a very positive outcome. The evaluation concluded just before the Feast Must Fall event that happened at South African universities. But already in our in the recommendations that the evaluation put forward to us was that we need to urgently look at measures to try and get funding to students quicker and faster, and to work closely with the National Student Financial Aid Scheme to ensure that that happens. We've made progress around that. I don't think we've achieved what the recommendation wants us to achieve, but we've made progress. We've got a far closer relationship with the National Student Financial Aid Scheme. We've got a memorandum of agreement with them. We've started to put things in place that will enable and strengthen the efficiency of the processes of the Funza Lushaka bursary program. And that was as a result of this particular evaluation.
So for me, those were the learnings. The learnings were about understanding what's happening in each province and getting a sense of the different models and codifying that, documenting it, and then using that information and data later on to strengthen our system, strengthen the way that we roll out, and strengthen accountability, and then with a view to later on having an impact evaluation. So the evaluation points us to the gaps and how we can get better. And I think that's the role of this evaluation. Help government be more efficient and be more effective. We also learned as a sector a whole lot more about our different levels of accountability for this really good program. We learned a lot about where to plug the gaps. We also were able to use the evaluation to mobilize capacity and resources. And I think for the first time, we were able, through this evaluation, to show our commitment to outcomes-based approaches within government. We have better measurement of Funza Lushaka outputs, better engagement and coordination across the departments, because it's Department of Basic Education and Higher Education, but also the labor market for educators. So we have a lot more analysis that feeds itself through now every quarter through this journey of Funza Lushaka. It covers 9.5 million children out of the 12 million in our sector. We have billions being spent on this program every year. It's implemented by provinces, so we have 9 provincial models for procurement, for provisioning, and then we at national monitor how that is happening in terms of the beneficiaries, but also in terms of certain standards and guidelines around how it should work. We intended to start with an impact evaluation. We had to start with an implementation evaluation. We didn't go out to do a forensic analysis of how the nutrition program works. That wasn't the intention. It was how implementation works or doesn't work and how we can plug those gaps.
Because there was no explicit theory of change, and we had to work with the service provider and the program people to develop a theory of change. It really helped everyone from province, national, civil society to come to a common understanding on the program and what it hopes to achieve. One key recommendation was around upscaling, looking at upscaling the program, because it was found that the starting time for feeding is normally after 10, when many learners are already hungry and can't concentrate in the morning. A possibility of introducing a snack maybe, or some breakfast perhaps, or starting this feeding earlier, maybe around 9. But also there are schools that are situated in the border of learners who reside next to affluent areas and who attend schools in quintile 4 to 5. Those are privileged schools. The recommendation was that school nutrition should be introduced in those schools, so they should be targeting those learners who are in need also to be provided. There were also recommendations around integrating these nutrition programs, because many departments are offering these, but there's a need for integrating and collaborating together. The importance of the monitoring systems, to strengthen the monitoring systems. The issue of disbursement of funds, because apparently there's been some delays in disbursing funds from provinces to schools. So these are some of the key recommendations.
So it was very useful in providing a snapshot, not necessarily a representative snapshot, of how it works in Eastern Cape versus Free State versus Gauteng, and what the different models are and modalities. We hope in future to use that information, those vignettes, if you like, of information about how people within the system perceive this program, but also how it's received, to then work on a more rigorous impact evaluation. The results were finally considered by Cabinet, showing you how high stakes it is. Of course, in terms of private sector and civil society interest, nutrition programs are always very important. They are at the heart of poverty alleviation and nutrition status in the country. So we made the right decision to look at the implementation of this. So this evaluation helped us to regularize how it really functions in practice, not just in theory, but also to compare standards of the guidelines and how they are applied in different places, and how then the different provinces provision. So that was very useful about this evaluation. I think the recommendations of the nutrition evaluation helped us to standardize across different departments certain issues around meal choices, menu choices, decision making around some of the aspects of the nutrition program. It helped us to understand key weaknesses in the procurement and provisioning chain. So not everything was implemented, but certainly it helped us to generate options around implementation for ourselves, but also for how we work and collaborate with other partners in this space.
So we had to involve them from the onset. The design of the evaluation. They are the ones who propose the key questions, purpose. And then we established a steering committee, which included the department, but then other key role players, the unions. I think there was someone from the civil society, but there were other critical departments like National School Nutrition, Department of Health, and there was a provincial representative, someone from Eastern Cape. All these stakeholders helped to enrich, the evaluation process, because they came up with brilliant perspectives from different angles. Some of these we did not expect, but it was very helpful to involve them throughout the process. As soon as we completed the evaluation, we afforded management an opportunity to respond to the findings and recommendations, and that was also helpful. We also worked together with the department and other stakeholders to develop an improvement plan. All these were helpful in promoting use. Let me not also forget the issues of quality, because we had a good team, even from DBE, who were quality checking the evaluation. We had a peer reviewer, Laura Poswell, who made some critical comments. Whilst that was very helpful, but I must say it also delayed the process. The first report was produced around August 2015, but then we approved following year, only a year later. They wanted to ensure that the evaluation is of good quality. So it delayed by almost a year, but at the end we were all convinced that it was of good quality. All our evaluations are subjected to the evaluation quality assessment system, and it scored very well. So generally, these are some of the measures that we put in place to ensure that the evaluation is used.
One of the main reasons that it was so successful is because we were able to almost seamlessly work with DPME, the Department of Planning, Monitoring, Evaluation, as well as the evaluator. We were able to draw in our provincial colleagues at points of discussion. The evaluator brought us together one day on more than one day, from across the sector, our provincial colleagues from NSFAS, from universities and the department, to work on a theory of change. And just that opportunity to pause and reflect on the bursary program had so much value, not just for the evaluation, but also for those that were part of the bigger process. And they, for the first time, probably had an opportunity to contribute and raise concerns, but also contribute to solutions for some of the issues that we experienced.
At the end of the evaluation, we had a better sense through the theory of change workshops, through the sort of walking through with the Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation, our own engagement as M&E professionals with the program managers and vice versa. So we learned a lot as M&E people.
What was valuable for us is that there was a clear recommendation that the funding that is given need to reach the particular audience that we would want it to reach. You know, it puts up cautions regarding your way of work and the way that you've been implementing in the past. And it takes you out of that comfort place where you find yourself and say, okay, if you're going to continue in this particular way, you are going to run into some significant challenges, and therefore it was appropriate in the sense that it gave us a wake-up call to say, change your policy in order to remain relevant to what is needed in terms of the bursary program. I think evidence-based policy making is very important. The only caution that I would, from my perspective, would put forward is that working in education, you're working with human beings, and it is therefore important that the qualitative part of evidence not get lost in the process. It always has to be the child at the center, and we should never lose our focus from that.
One of the key lessons is that we can commission a lot of evaluations, but that is not the only key thing, because that is the generation of evidence. And when evidence is generated, it doesn't mean that eventually it will be utilized. So this is just the starting point of generating it. So the lesson that we are learning is that from there have to be mechanisms that you implement that allow you to see the final utilization of that evidence. And so it's a key lesson that we are seeing, because the department is going back to rethinking about how it can have a process of then making sure that they institutionalize the way they utilize this evidence. The other lesson that we're learning is that beyond these evaluations, there needs to be institutional capacity to take on the recommendations and then make them worthwhile to implement. The other thing we're realizing is that there have to be resources that can be channeled towards the change that is required to be seen. So it just doesn't cost nothing to implement or utilize findings or evidence. There is a process that is required to raise the resources that are required so that we can see the realization of those findings and that evaluation's outputs. So that's quite critical.
We started off wanting to do impact evaluations. It's sort of very scientific, very rigorous, and we found we just didn't have enough data to do that. So we had to sort of cut it back to implementation evaluations. I see in the future, 5 years' time, we'll have a lot more impact evaluation understanding, we'll have a lot more evaluation understanding, and I think we'll have a lot more understanding of the fact that data and monitoring is not just about reporting to your superiors, but it's reporting to the nation in a way that has integrity and it's valid. How we monitor as a sector, how well we do it, how effectively we do it, and what information we still need to work on. These are the milestones in that journey, and the evaluations we used to help to deepen that work of developing systems for decision making in the sector.